Have you ever heard thunder before it arrives? Not the crash, not the roar, but the whisper. A quiet breath hiding in the air. A sound that hums just beneath the silence. The kind that stirs something ancient in you. Something deep. Something true. They say there was once a boy who heard it first. A boy hidden among the clouds. His name was Zeus. Not yet mighty, not yet king. Just a child of sky and wind. Curious, quiet, listening. This is not a tale of war. Not of power taken, but of power discovered. Of a path chosen, not forced. The journey of becoming. Of storms that shape, not destroy. Of silence that speaks. Of thunder that awakens. This is the story of the Thunderborn, the boy who became the sky. So take a breath. Let go of what you thought you knew. The clouds are moving, the wind is rising, and somewhere, just beyond the stillness, the storm begins. Long before the world knew his name, before statues, temples, and thunder, Zeus was simply a child of the sky, born not on land, but high above it, in a secret cradle made of drifting clouds. A bed not of wood, but woven wind. The sky itself wrapped around him like a lullaby. His mother, Rhea, feared the world below, so she whispered to the heavens, "Keep him safe, until he's ready." And the sky listened. It held the boy gently, like breath held in silence. He was raised by air, not earth, by the quiet before the rain, by cloud spirits who had no names, only songs. They called him Little Thunder, not because he roared, but because he didn't. Even as a baby, he listened more than he cried. He watched the skies like he belonged to them. When he reached out, the air would hum softly, a quiet thrum beneath the wind, like something waiting, like a secret the sky hadn't told yet. Zeus didn't know what it was, only that it felt like his. The clouds loved him. The sun rose early for him. The moon never left his side. Even stars blinked brighter when he gazed at them. He walked on air before he ever walked on ground, leaping from puff to puff like a sky-born flame. Birds raced him, and he laughed like wind through trees. Sometimes, thunder would rumble in the distance, not angry, not loud, just low, deep, familiar, as if it knew his name. On his fifth sky turn, the clouds celebrated. The winds spun ribbons of light. The rain fell like soft music. Then came the eagle, vast, ancient, silent. At first, it landed with grace and power. Its feathers shimmered with sky fire. Its eyes were full of storms. It spoke only once. "The world below will need you." Zeus looked down through the clouds. He had never truly seen the world beneath. Only shapes, shadows, colors. But now, he felt something else. Note, land. Note, ocean. A question, the kind the sky couldn't answer. And a pull gentle, steady inside his chest. A calling, not a push from behind, but a voice ahead. His journey hadn't begun yet, but it would. That night, the breeze whispered to him, "You are more than sky. You are the storm." And the silence that follows. Zeus closed his eyes, not in fear, but in wonder. The world below would wait. For now, he was still the sky's child, still the whisper before the thunder. But soon, the storm would begin to walk. The clouds had raised him, the winds had sung him to sleep, but even the sky knew it could not hold him forever. There came a day when the winds changed, not in anger, not in haste, but with purpose. A stillness crept across the sky like morning fog. The cloud spirits grew quiet. The birds flew lower. And Zeus felt it. A tug inside him. Not painful, just undeniable. The pull had returned. Not from above. From below. The eagle's words echoed again. "The world below will need you." Zeus stood at the edge of the clouds. He looked not just down, but toward. The clouds behind him drifted like old memories. The winds no longer pushed. They waited. He took a step, then another, and then he was falling. But it didn't feel like falling. more like flying in reverse. Like gravity was gently calling him home. He passed through layers of air, cool, warm, soft, sharp. Each one whispered something. Listen, watch, remember. And then he landed. No crash, no sound, just a breath. His feet touched the earth. For the first time, grass beneath him, soil beneath that. Warm, solid, alive. He knelt and touched the ground. It was dense, different from cloud, yet it hummed too. A beetle crawled across his hand. He watched it closely, smiled. The world was louder than the sky. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, rivers spoke in riddles. And still, silence lived here too, hidden behind the sound, waiting for someone who listened. So zeused it. The trees told stories with creaking limbs. The breeze smelled like bark and memory. Far off, thunder rolled. But it wasn't his. Not yet. He wandered valleys and hills. He spoke no words. The world was already speaking. At night, he slept under whispering branches. By day, he followed the Sunday, letting it guide him. Then one dusk, the sky changed. Clouds followed him. But they were different now. Darker, thicker, not angry, awake. A storm was coming. Still, not his. He stood still. Let the wind wrap around him. It didn't fight him. It showed him. Raindrops kissed his skin like questions. Lightning flashed like forgotten letters. And through the rain, a voice came, soft as thunder in leaves. What are you, child of sky? Why are you here? Zeus didn't answer with words. He placed his hand on the earth and waited. The storm raged, but he stayed, listening, still, until the storm changed. Wind softened, rain slowed, thunder quieted. It recognized him, not as an outsider, as its own. The next morning, the world was new. Birds returned. Sunlight broke through clouds. Everything shimmered with silver light. And Zeus had changed. The rhythm of sky now lived in the ground. He felt it in his chest, in the roots, in the air. Storms spoke, and he was learning to understand. That evening, he climbed a hill. Behind him, the sky. Ahead, the world. He was not one or the other. He was in between. A bridge, a breath, a storm in waiting. A breath deep, not as a child of sky, not as a stranger, but as something more. The clouds whispered, soon. And in his heart, thunder stirred, but it didn't roar. It waited. The day began in silence. Not the empty kind, the kind that holds its breath, as if the world was waiting. Zeus woke beneath an old tree. Its branches reached like arms. Its bark hummed like a voice that never sleeps. He sat up and listened. The sky was pale, brushed with gold. The clouds were thin and quiet. Birds chirped, but cautiously. The wind moved, but barely. Something had shifted. He felt it. Not fear, not danger, just readiness. He stood barefoot on wet grass. Every step hummed. The earth vibrated softly beneath him. Something was calling, not loudly, but clearly. He followed, through whispering trees, over silent hills, past stones wrapped in moss. Then he saw it. A clearing, perfectly round, perfectly still. No wind, no birds. At the center, one stone, tall, black, smooth, uncarved, untouched, unmoving. Zeus stepped into the circle. The air changed, heavier, fuller. Every breath felt thick with something unseen. He moved toward the stone. Each step made his heart beat louder, not from fear, from rhythm. He placed his hand on the stone and felt it. Thunder, not above him, inside him. A deep sound that didn't shake. It breathed through his chest, into the ground, back again. He didn't pull away. He stayed, listening. The thunder wasn't loud. It was calm, patient, vast, like it had waited forever. He closed his eyes, The world faded. No forest, no sky, no time, only sound, only pulse, only voice. And then it spoke, not with words, with meaning. You are not only sky, you are balance, you are stillness, you are breath before storm. You are not thunder's master, you are its mirror, you are its answer. Zeus opened his eyes. The world returned, changed. Clouds gathered above him, thick and dark, not angry. Awake. The wind rose, but it didn't scare him. He looked at his hand. It hummed. Thunder lived there now, a rhythm inside him, a quiet, endless beat. He stepped back. The stone fell silent, not because it was empty, because it had shared. Now, the thunder was his. He looked to the clouds. Lightning danced far away. He lifted his hand, not to control, to connect. The wind curled around his fingers. A raindrop landed on his palm. Then another. Still, the storm didn't break. It waited. For him, not as a servant, as a reflection. He stood in the rain. Let it fall. Let it speak. Let it know him. This was not power. This was presence. Not a force to wield, but a truth to carry. Night came. He turned from the clearing. The stone stood still. But within, something had shifted. He was no longer just the sky's child. He was the storm's echo. He didn't fly. He walked. Each step firm. Each breath deep. He was not the storm. He was its heart. And as he moved through the night, thunder followed, not to destroy, to remind. Even the sky listens. When silence dares to speak, the day began in silence. Not the empty kind, the kind that holds its breath, as if the world was waiting. Zeus woke beneath an old tree. Its branches reached like arms. Its bark hummed, like a voice that never sleeps. He sat up and listened. The sky was pale, brushed with gold. The clouds were thin and quiet. Birds chirped, but cautiously. The wind moved, but barely. Something had shifted. Have felt it. Not fear, not danger, just readiness. He stood barefoot on wet grass. Every step hummed. The earth vibrated softly beneath him. Something was calling. Not loudly, but clearly. He followed. Through whispering trees. Over silent hills. Past stones wrapped in moss. Then he saw it. A clearing. Perfectly round. Perfectly still. No wind. No birds. At the center, one stone. Tall. Black. Smooth. Uncarved. Untouched. Unmoving. Zeus stepped into the circle. The air changed. Heavier. Fuller. Every breath felt thick with something unseen. He moved toward the stone. Each step made his heart beat louder. Not from fear. From rhythm. He placed his hand on the stone and felt it. Thunder. Not above him. Inside him. A deep sound that didn't shake. It breathed. Through his chest. Into the ground. Back again. He didn't pull away. He stayed. Listening. The thunder wasn't loud. It was calm. Patient. Vast. Like it had waited forever. He closed his eyes. The world faded. No forest. No sky. No time. Only sound. Only pulse. Only voice. And then it spoke. Not with words. With meaning. You are not only sky. You are balance. You are stillness. You are breath before storm. You are not thunder's master. You are its mirror. You are its answer. Zeus opened his eyes. The world returned. Changed. Clouds gathered above him. Thick. And dark. Not angry. Awake. The wind rose. But it didn't scare him. He looked at his hand. It hummed. Thunder lived there now. A rhythm inside him. A keyed, endless beat. He stepped back. The stone fell silent. Not because it was empty. Because it had shared. Now, the thunder was his. He looked to the clouds. Lightning danced far away. He lifted his hand. Not to control. To connect. The wind curled around his fingers. A raindrop landed on his palm. Then another. Still the storm didn't break. It waited. For him, not as a servant, as a reflection, he stood in the rain. Let it fall. Let it speak. Let it know him. This was not power. This was presence. Not a force to wield, but a truth to carry. Night came. He turned from the clearing. The stone stood still. But within, something had shifted. He was no longer just the sky's child. He was the storm's echo. He didn't fly. He walked, each step firm, each breath deep. He was not the storm. He was its heart. And as he moved through the night, thunder followed, not to destroy, to remind. Even the sky listens. When silence dares to speak, the day began in silence. Not the empty kind, the kind that holds its breath, as if the world was waiting. Zeus woke beneath an old tree. Its branches reached like arms. Its bark hummed like a voice that never sleeps. He sat up and listened. The sky was pale, brushed with gold. The clouds were thin and quiet. Birds chirped, but cautiously. The wind moved, but barely. Something had shifted. Have felt it. Not fear, not danger, just readiness. He stood barefoot on wet grass. Every step hummed. The earth vibrated softly beneath him. Something was calling, not loudly, but clearly. He followed, through whispering trees, over silent hills, past stones wrapped in moss. Then he saw it. A clearing, perfectly round, perfectly still. No wind, no birds. At the center, one stone, tall, black, smooth, uncarved, untouched, unmoving. Zeus stepped into the circle. The air changed, heavier, fuller. Every breath felt thick with something unseen. He moved toward the stone. Each step made his heart beat louder. Not from fear, from rhythm. He placed his hand on the stone and felt it. Thunder. Not above him, inside him. A deep sound that didn't shake. It breathed. Through his chest, into the ground. Back again. He didn't pull away. He stayed. Listening. The thunder wasn't loud. It was calm. Patient. Vast. Like it had waited forever. He closed his eyes. The world faded. No forest. No shy. No time. Only sound. Only pulse. Only voice. And then it spoke. Not with words. With meaning. You are not only sky. You are balance. You are stillness. You are breath before storm. You are not thunder's master. You are its mirror. You are its answer. Zeus opened his eyes. The world returned. Changed. Clouds gathered above him. Thick and dark. Not angry. Awake. The wind rose. But it didn't scare him. He looked at his hand. It hummed. Thunder lived there now. A rhythm inside him. A quiet, endless beat. He stepped back. The stone fell silent. Not because it was empty, because it had shared. Now, the thunder was his. He looked to the clouds. Lightning danced far away. He lifted his hand, not to control, to connect. The wind curled around his fingers. A raindrop landed on his palm. Then another. Still, the storm didn't break. It waited. For him, not as a servant, as a reflection. He stood in the rain. Let it fall. Let it speak. Let it know him. This was not power. This was presence. Not a force to wield, but a truth to carry. Night came. He turned from the clearing. The stone stood still, but within something had shifted. He was no longer just the sky's child. He was the storm's echo. He didn't fly. He walked. Each step firm. Each breath deep. He was not the storm. He was its heart. And as he moved through the night, thunder followed. Not to destroy. To remind. Even the sky listens. When silence dares to speak. The sky was quiet, but not empty. It hummed, as if something waited. Not above, not beyond, but within. Zeus woke before dawn. The stars still blinked overhead, and the air was cool on his skin. He sat up slowly, not because he was tired, but because the world around him was so still. He didn't want to disturb it. His breath made clouds in the air, soft, fleeting, like the thoughts in his chest. A question rose in him, not loud, but clear. What now? He had heard the sky, felt the mountain, listened to the wind, but something remained, unanswered, unspoken, not out there, inside. So he stood and waited. No plan, no path, just presence. Then, a flicker, not light, not sound, a feeling. It moved through him like a thread of warmth, not outside his skin, within his bones. His fingers tingled, his heart shifted. He closed his eyes and listened to the thing he hadn't dared touch. The lightning inside. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rage. It was rhythm, like breath, like heartbeat, like memory. It didn't want to break. It wanted to speak. So he let it. His body stayed still, but his spirit moved down into himself, past the questions, past the noise, to a quiet place. There, in the dark beneath his ribs, a spark, small, bright, alive. It didn't flash. It glowed. It didn't roar. It pulsed. And in its light, he saw, not visions, truths. He saw his mother, hidden in a cave, whispering lullabies made of rain. He saw the first time he felt thunder, and knew it wasn't outside him. He saw all the moments he had been afraid, of what lived in his chest, and all the times he held it in. Now, he no longer needed to. The lightning didn't want out. It wanted to be known. He reached for it, not with hands, but with welcome. And the moment he did, it answered. Not as fire, not as pain, as belonging. It flowed into his limbs, through his breath, through his spine. He didn't glow. He didn't rise. He became. Not more, not other. Just true. When he opened his eyes, the world hadn't changed. But he had. He looked at his hands. They weren't charged with power. They were steady with knowing. He didn't feel stronger, have felt clearer. The sky above remained still, but it no longer watched. It recognized. He had not taken the lightning. He had remembered it. He had let it come home. Zeus walked slowly through the field, not searching, not hiding, letting the rhythm move with him. He raised his hand, and the wind met it. He spoke no words, and the clouds replied anyway. A low, soft rumble, not a warning. A response, a hello. He smiled, because now he knew thunder wasn't what he summoned. It was what he was. Not noise, not force, presence. He would not raise storms to rule. He would carry them, speak with them, grow with them. Because lightning wasn't meant to be thrown. It was meant to be understood. And now, he understood. Not everything, but enough. Enough to begin. The horizon waited for him. It didn't call or push. It simply opened. Zeus walked toward it. Each step felt like a conversation. The wind shifted as if answering him. He didn't know what was ahead. But this time, he was fine not knowing. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was in his breath, in the way he moved, in how he listened. The clouds ahead were thick, not dark with anger, full with something else. A silence that trembled, like a song waiting to be sung. The sky wasn't angry. It was full of something long carried and never spoken. Until now, Zeus stepped into the mist. It wrapped around him like memory. The air chilled, his skin dampened with sky. It felt like beginning. In the center of the fog, stillness, not emptiness, something alive. The wind held its breath, and so did he. A soft hum returned, low, constant, known. He closed his eyes and listened. Then the sky whispered, just one word, felt, not heard. Now, he didn't ask what it meant. He knew. It was time, not for power, not for praise, but for presence, for becoming. He raised his hand slowly, as if lifting something sacred. The clouds responded. They didn't crack. They parted. A single thread of light fell, golden, gentle, alive. It wrapped around his arm, not to bind. Hopeless. He didn't burn. He felt stillness inside. The light became part of him. Then, thunder, but not loud. Just enough, like the sky was clearing its throat. Before speaking something ancient, the voice wasn't sound. It was rhythm. It was trust, not a command. An offering. A choice. Zeus understood. He didn't need to speak. He only needed to open. The storm hadn't chosen him to rule. It had chosen him to feel, to carry, to keep, because no one had ever truly listened to it. Until now, he breathed in, not to control, to receive. And in that breath, he didn't become a god. He became a vessel. The storm moved through him. It didn't tear. It didn't blaze. It flowed, and it whispered its truth, not as thunder, not as lightning, but as something new. A word. It came from the storm, through him. Not loud, not sharp, but real. Peace. That was its first word, the one buried under centuries of noise. It had never been about destruction. It had just never been heard. Now, it was. And it didn't need to scream anymore. Zeus opened his eyes. The fog lifted slowly, not like something ending, like something beginning. The sky cleared. It wasn't proud. It was seen. He smiled, because he didn't tame the storm. He met it. He listened. He stayed. And in return, it spoke back. The wind had changed. It no longer pushed him. It walked beside him, like an old friend. Each breeze carried a memory, but they weren't just his. The world was speaking now, and Zeus finally listened. He walked down from the cliffs, not as a god, not as a warrior, but as a student of silence. The forest below wasn't empty. It breathed. It waited. The leaves rustled softly. Stones hummed beneath his feet. Even the roots whispered ancient things, older than any story he knew. And above him, the sky watched. It didn't hover like a crown. It followed like a companion, not like a king, like a storm meeting its echo. For the first time, Zeus wasn't searching. No battles, no thrones, no proving, just walking, step by step, breath by breath. In a clearing, he saw someone, an old woman, wrapped in color, wrapped in time. She sat by a fire, small, alive. She looked up, not surprised, not afraid, just aware. Long walk? She asked. He nodded. Long silence, he answered. She smiled. They're often the same. He sat beside her. No titles, no power, just presence. They didn't speak, but everything spoke through the stillness. Her eyes were steady, kind, like rain studying earth. You carry something, she said. He nodded again. Too many things, he replied. Are they yours? Some. Others? I'm learning to let go. She fed the fire a leaf. It sparked, then vanished. Storms don't ask permission, she said. No, he agreed. But maybe they should ask for understanding. Her smile deepened. Not just her lips. Her whole self smiled. Then maybe, she said, you're not the storm. Maybe you're the voice it's always needed. He didn't reply. He didn't have to. Some truths are too deep for words. The fire softened. The wind stilled. When he rose to leave, she didn't say goodbye. She only whispered, not all echoes are behind you. The path ahead wasn't marked. It twisted. It rose and fell. But somehow, he knew it. The earth met each step gently, not forcing, welcoming. He didn't reach for power. He reached for presence. His heart didn't race. It trusted. The thunder inside had changed. Still strong, but quiet. Still vast, but kind. He passed rivers, hills, empty ridges kissed by wind. And still, he listened. Children laughing, bird songs soaring. Even silence had rhythm. He didn't walk as a god or a storm. He walked as someone who had listened. And now, he carried that gentleness forward. The sky stayed near, not watching, but walking. The storm had given him voice. He had given it peace. The mountain stood before him like an old truth, not hostile, not welcoming, just present. It had always been there, even when he was a child, even when he tried to outrun it. But now, he wasn't running. He was ready to climb. The path was steep, but not cruel. Each stone felt familiar, as if it remembered him, even if he had forgotten it. The wind traced his shoulders, not to test him, but to remind him. This was where the storm had begun. And here, he would return it. At the summit, the sky opened like a book. The clouds didn't form shapes. They simply existed. No fury, no command. For once, they weren't waiting for orders, and neither was he. He knelt, not in worship, but in acknowledgement, not of gods, not of thunder, of himself, of the road behind him, of lessons earned without war, of silences louder than shouts. He placed his hand on the altar, the place where lightning was once summoned, the place where he once begged for power. But now, he offered it back, not because he lost it, but because he no longer needed it to define him. The sky rumbled, not in anger, not in warning, but in memory. He whispered a vow, soft as breath, strong as a mountain root. I will carry this storm with care. I won't use it to rule. I won't use it to create fear. I'll walk with it, as a friend walks beside another. The clouds parted. No spectacle, just sunlight, soft on his face. He stood taller, not because he grew, but because he let go. And sometimes, letting go is the bravest thing a god can do. As he turned to descend, the wind whispered his name, not the one used in war, not the one carved in myth, just Zeus. No title, no thunder, just a name at peace with itself. He walked down the mountain, but it didn't feel like leaving. It felt like bringing something home. He didn't return to temples. He didn't summon crowds. He claimed no throne. He sat beside rivers. He listened to farmers. He helped rebuild what storms had broken. And slowly, people saw him differently. He became known not for destruction, but for understanding. In time, stories changed. Children didn't fear thunder anymore. They spoke of it as something alive, something that listened, something that healed. They called it the Stormkeeper's gift, not because it was his, but because he had shared it. Zeus never stopped walking, village to mountain, shore to desert. Wherever storms once raged, he brought calm, not by silencing them, but by honoring them. He wasn't the storm's master. He was its keeper, its companion, its student. And when dark clouds returned, when thunder rolled across the hills, people no longer ducked. They looked up and smiled, because they knew the storm was still there. But now it walked gently, because someone had once dared to listen to it, and became more than its echo. There are places where time doesn't move the way it should, where the sky holds on to the light just a bit too long, where silence isn't empty, it's alive. Zeus found one of those places, at the end of a road no one remembered. No signs, no maps, no names, just space, just sky, just waiting. He stepped onto the dry grass, and the world listened, not because of who he was, but because of what he was becoming. The land was wide and golden. No trees, no stones, only breath and light. The kind of silence that hums, the kind that remembers. He walked without a goal, trusting the moment. Then, on a small hill, he saw a child, alone, barefoot, watching the horizon. The child didn't look afraid. They turned as if they'd been expecting him. Zeus paused beside them. "Is this your home?" he asked. The child shook their head. "No one owns a horizon." He smiled. That felt true. They stood together, saying nothing. A god and a child, past and future. "Why are you here?" Zeus asked. The child pointed to the open sky. "I listen." "To what?" he asked. To what hasn't happened yet. He nodded slowly. That made sense in a way words couldn't hold. You carry the storm, the child said. Zeus looked at his hands. I do, but I carry it differently now. Is it heavy? The child asked. Only when I try to hold it alone. The wind shifted softly. It didn't howl. It whispered. Zeus listened. Not for warnings, but for wonder. Thunder isn't the loud part, the child said. It's the silence before that matters. He closed his eyes, remembering all the silences he once rushed through. The child bent down and picked up a small stone. They placed it in his hand. Plant it. He blinked. It's a stone. All seeds feel that way at first. The child smiled. He knelt and placed it in the earth. Nothing happened, but the ground felt different, like it had been waiting. You won't see it grow, the child said, but it will remember you. So I stood. The horizon stretched out ahead, open, unwritten. The child turned and walked into the golden grass. No path, no destination, just trust. He didn't call after them. Some stories weren't meant to be held. He looked at his hands again. Older, quieter, still holding thunder, but now without the need to raise it. It rested in his palms, alive, but calm. The sky didn't speak. It simply accepted. He took a breath and stepped forward, not as a god, not as a storm, but as someone who had listened and would keep listening, to wind, to silence, to what hadn't happened yet. There's a fire that doesn't burn, a fire that waits, not to destroy, but to remind. It lives inside everyone, and Zeus had never truly faced it. Until now, he wandered into a forgotten valley. The air was warm, but not from the Sunday. Something deeper waited beneath the ground. Not danger, just presence, just breath, just truth. A narrow cave opened before him, dark, quiet, pulsing with memory. He stepped inside. No fear, only listening. The stone whispered like old songs. The deeper he walked, the quieter he became. Then he saw her, an old woman, sitting beside still water. Her robe was the color of dusk, her eyes like glowing embers. You've come, she said. I didn't know I would, Zeus replied. But yes, you brought the storm, she said. I brought what's left of it, he answered. She smiled, gently. And what do you believe remains? He said nothing. He didn't know yet. She reached into the water, pulled out a small, glowing coal. Still warm, still alive. Not burning, just waiting. She set it on a flat stone before him. This is what you left behind, she said. Not thunder, not lightning, but the part of you that never spoke. Zeus stared at it and saw his silence. He had always feared this kind of fire. The soft kind, the quiet kind, the kind that reveals instead of consumes. But now, he was ready. He knelt before it, and in the flickering glow, he saw more than light. He saw himself. The parts he'd ignored, the feelings he buried, shame, loss, guilt, love, all flickering in the coal's soft glow. Not to punish him, but to ask, will you carry us now? The woman nodded. This is not the fire that destroys, she said. It's the one that heals. He reached out, held it in his hand. No pain, only warmth. It hummed softly. A memory, a song, a breath. It whispered truths he'd forgotten, and forgiveness he'd never allowed. He looked up. Is it mine now? No, she said. It's yours to become. He stood slowly. The coal pulsed once in his hand, then faded into light. It didn't vanish. It became part of him. He didn't feel heavier. He felt real. Outside, the sky was soft with twilight. The valley exhaled. He stepped forward, not as thunder, not as storm, but as someone carrying fire, not to burn, not to blind, but to guide, to warm, to remind others they weren't alone. He understood now. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits, quiet, still, steady, until you're ready to hold it gently. Zeus walked on, no lightning in his fist, just fire in his heart. The kind that doesn't need to be seen, to be felt. They say the sky forgets. That lightning strikes, then disappears. That thunder roars, then fades. But the sky remembers. It holds echoes, it holds light, it holds stories long after they're told. And on this day, the sky held Zeus. Not the god of storms, not the angry deity of old, but a man, Azul, transformed. He stood at the edge of a mountain, not to summon thunder, not to be worshipped, but to listen. The wind was quiet. The clouds hung soft, like breath before words. Below him, the world turned slowly, unbothered by power, unshaken by myth. He smiled, not because he had won anything, but because he had let go. All his life, he thought he had to hold the sky together, to keep the chaos in check, to keep others safe by carrying the storm inside. But storms weren't meant to live inside us forever. They come, they teach, they pass, and sometimes they leave behind a clearer sky. A single bird soared beneath him, free, unafraid. Zeus watched it for a long time. There had been a time he would have envied it. Now, he simply admired it. Behind him, he heard footsteps, soft, steady, familiar. It was Hera. No crown, no sharpness in her voice. Just Hera, the woman, not the queen, not the rival. She walked beside him. Neither spoke for a moment. The silence was enough. I felt it, she finally said. The fire, the stillness. Zeus nodded. I carried it a long time, and now I'm letting it become me, he said. Hera looked at him, saw something different in his face. Not weakness, not weariness, just peace and presence. The others feel it too, she said. The gods, they've changed. Or maybe they're beginning to. Zeus looked out over the horizon. Maybe that's enough, he said. She stepped closer, laid a hand on his shoulder. Whatever comes next, you won't be alone in it. Zeus turned to her, and for the first time in an eternity, he allowed himself to soften, to trust, to be held, not as the god of thunder, but as someone who had learned how to stay. The clouds above began to part, not from power, not from command, just naturally. The sun returned, slow and golden. It painted the world below in a new kind of light, one that didn't need to shout. He took a deep breath, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to remember what peace tasted like. The mountain no longer felt high. It felt level, like everything in his life had led to this balance. He looked to Hera, to the sky, to the world he once tried to control, and he whispered not a prayer, not a wish, but a truth. I am no longer thunder. I am what remains. And what remained was strong, not invincibly, not divine, but deeply alive. The sky didn't erupt. It didn't applaud. It just held him, as it always had, as it always would. And far away, in a place beyond names, the fire that had once waited for him now glowed in someone else, someone who would one day walk the same path, someone who would carry a storm, and then let it go. Because this is how stories live, not through noise, not through legend, but through light, passed from one to another, through hearts that remember when the sky could feel. And so ends this chapter, not with thunder, but with quiet, with breath, with warmth, and the promise that in every storm, there is always a clearing sky.